Hello and welcome to the Aftermath Podcast. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Dylan.
Scuffed edition.
Yeah. And we have our good friend Dominic here.
Thank you guys. You guys glad to be here.
In this episode, we did not watch something that was gonna question morals of humanity or anything like that. It was a little more fun.
Well, it was my intention to bring you guys something that was more fun. I tend to get really deep, and I love stuff like that.
Oh,
and
same.
I just found it funny. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna have something that questions the morals of man, like you were talking about. It's not foundational. It doesn't question society. Let's do an old-fashioned detective show. It's like, oh no,
nice and surface level.
Yes. Yep. We watched the first episode. Is it the first episode?
Yep, it was the very first episode. The movie
of Columbo.
Yeah, Prescription Murder.
Yes.
What a title.
Before we get too much further in this episode,
you want to give a preface?
Yes, I'm going to preface. So we initially, I'm going to just be dead honest with everyone.
Yeah, Frank's a good friend of ours.
Yeah,
that's why we're using him.
Sinatra himself. We sat down here last night, the night before the night we're recording it currently. Mm-hmm. We sat down and I started up booting everything up like we should do, and the board totally lost power, and we couldn't get it to start back up again. And so our soundboard is kaput.
It was indeed a TV party moment. For
lack of a better term, it's dead. And so I tried my best because I'm about to go on vacation. Oh, well, by the time you're hearing this, Dylan and I are currently on vacation.
Yeah, sipping martinis.
Exactly, on the beach and whatnot. I'm
laughing because I will be at work.
There you go. Love it. So anyways, I have this show to host and produce. I have the other show, Retrospect, that I do to host and produce. Ethan's show, he's already talked about it, right?
I think, yeah.
Anyways, Ethan's show, About Nothing, is on schedule to drop. So it's going to be out whenever we're on our vacation. So he's fine.
No worries on that front.
But the problem is that I have other shows to run and no time to do them. And with the board, which is the critical element of the show being out,
the linchpin,
I had to figure out an alternative. And we are currently recording on the alternative. We're using all the same mics, but they're definitely... I don't think the show's going to sound as good as it normally does, and so I wanted to apologize.
The new
top.
linchpin we got doesn't quite measure up, unfortunately.
It's okay. The thing is,
it works.
It is a backup, and it is a solid backup for the price that I purchased for it. And again, if ever anything happens again, we have something, and I can also use this for other things in my life as well. So it definitely has its perks. Anyways, I just wanted to say that because I know for a fact that this episode is going to sound different, and before I start getting comments or saying anything,
it's going to be an audible slap to the face.
Yeah, right. I want everyone to know. And again, if you hear any sounds, the effects on the previous board were so good.
Now you're hearing
exactly.
Everything else.
So now the gate on all the microphones that normally helps me out in post is not going to be here. So, anyways, enough with all of the back end. Let's go ahead and get into Prescription Murder.
Yeah.
Like you said, what a title.
I love it.
For for an episode. Straight to the point. What are we doing?
Prescribing
death.
To those deserving or otherwise.
So do you guys want to say anything off at the top? Because I have something that I have something to say, but I feel like I've been talking a whole lot right here at the top. So I'll go ahead and let you guys.
Yeah, give somebody else the talking stick.
Hey, you go. Here's all the room. Say something.
No, you.
Okay, so
I don't want to.
No, you.
So something I find really interesting about this show is, to my knowledge, it was one of the first, if not the first, televised thing that had a how is he going to catch him instead of a whodunit.
Interesting.
So usually we see in novels and such, a detective walks up on a crime scene that's happened. Goes,
right.
Oh, I'm going to see what mud was on his jacket, and I can tell you that he was a dockman, and then we find out who he was. But in this, we see the murderer murder somebody and
we
mess the scene up. And
not instantly either. We see like a workup, like the methodical, like we get some real backstory on the characters here before stuff happens.
And usually we get to see the motives. And about half the time, we're like, I got to be honest, I might kill this person. But then this particular one, I would think is really great for the series to start off with, because the wife is actually a really lovable character.
Right.
She has a spine about her. She's going to stand up to her husband. She demands love from him and not simply respect or good manners. Right. And he is a terrific liar. And
he's a doctor. They're in this nice penthouse, and we kind of start off with like their 10-year anniversary. So like we really start like the foundation of this is like, okay, so like they're pretty well off, or at least he's well off, and like they've been together,
unquote, happily married.
Oh yeah, right. The facade is happily married, which is interesting. So like you don't, without having to say a whole lot, you're able to see, like you're able to infer, you know, logically. You're like, okay, yeah, this is at least the people that we're focusing on, this married couple right now. Like, okay, everything seems to be hunky dory right now.
And then bam, affair.
Well, and the first thing we hear from our killer character, in that way, our main character, is he's playing a game of Botticelli, which is, as far as I can tell, a guessing game.
Right.
And every name that's suggested of what famous person he's supposed to be in this guessing game, he knows exactly who they're referring to.
Right.
And says, no, I'm not this famous English barrister. No, that was a good guess, but I'm not this female writer from, Uruguay.
Right.
And so, okay, we're dealing with someone who is good under pressure.
Well learned.
Oh, yes, who's well educated, is competitive, and likes showing off that you're wrong and he's right.
And I know exactly what you're thinking.
And you're never going to figure me out. So just, what a setup.
High horse.
Oh, yeah.
And later on, when he starts lying to his wife, I think it's something that makes her endearing to us, is how willing she was to go along with his lie. She wanted to believe he was capable of change.
Yeah.
She wanted them to have a good marriage, able to overlook so many things that, frankly, she's a little stupid, but in a really lovable way.
She's stupid, but not stupid.
Yeah.
She's not bad stupid. She's like, oh, honey, you got a hot.
I think it's also just a little bit of like, you hope for the best in somebody. Right. Maybe not stupid, but just like I know that you're probably doing some things on the side, but at the same time, like I hope that you'd be better than that kind of thing. So.
Here's a spoiler.
So he's not.
They're in their 10th anniversary, and he gets a ring on the telephone, and he goes, "Oh,
making a house call."
Exactly. Right. And then she questions that. He goes off. Beautiful woman gets out of the pool and
oh yeah.
Do you love me?
He's like,
gets his suit all wet.
Yes, my darling, I love you.
How much?
This much. Gross old man kiss. Something I love about our killer actor though is when I look at his face, like the actor breaks like every time he has to be romantic with this girl. Of like, listen, I can't get into it. She's like 20, and I'm 60 years old.
Straight up sucking face, eyes wide open.
Even then, like I think it also, you're right. Like it could be like an actor being subconsciously like not in the scene. But I think it better sells the character, because I have felt for the entire time that he was never really in it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like the character obviously looks kind of cold, and he's very he's a psychiatrist, so obviously he knows what everyone's thinking. It's kind of his MO. But those like little moments like that where she's like all just like wide-eyed and like, oh my God, and he's just kind of like, yes, of course, and just kind of like just rubs his mouth on hers. It's like the entire time I was like, this guy's not. He may say he is, but like deep down, I really don't. I think he just wants to get rid of his wife, and she is the vessel with which to get that finished with.
And that's so shrewd, because I was thinking he's just this like randy old guy who finds a girl who's young enough and is like all over him, and he's gonna manipulate her. And I thought he was manipulating her for sex.
Right.
But he gets back to the apartment after the stuff, and he gets back, and his wife is like, don't mind undressing. Yeah, I've already turned down the guest bedroom for you.
Go to the couch.
So he says, oh, you don't need to worry. Like, I was with my doctor friend, You can call him if you like. And she goes, don't think I won't. Picks up the phone and is like, all right, dear, you don't need to call them. So then he goes on about what he was really doing was planning a vacation for them.
Right.
Here's why I say she was stupid. Motivation for telling that lie is supposedly to be able to make an amazing memory for them on vacation. Why would you leave your 10th anniversary to finish planning a trip you're going on tomorrow? Wouldn't you have already planned all those things? Wouldn't you leaving the party mean more now than later? Those motives don't add up. Your alibi is still false.
Well,
you're still a liar.
Yeah.
You're right. But I mean, still, I think it is something rather than nothing. And it's like at that moment, it's like we said before, he feels like he knows what everyone's thinking, and she's like trying to get him, and he's like, you can't get the getter. And then, of course, that's what he did. Like, I think he was working on his toes. Yeah. So he walked back to like the bathroom area and was like, I gotta figure out something. And he's like, figured it out. So I think, like, I mean, I don't think it was a lot of. I wouldn't say that she's dumb. I just think that he's dumb, and he was trying to act on his feet in a way. And I think that was one of the ways he was doing it. Was like,
he already had the plane tickets, so the vacation thing was definitely pre-planned. What are you getting at?
I was meaning like I think that the plan was in motion, but I don't think his goal was to tell his wife about that. I think his goal was to kill his wife and then use the tickets to then like proceed with the plan. So by him having to tell her and kind of get her involved in it was like his way of going like, I got to make this believable, at least for the time being. And so he was like, I'm taking us to Acapulco. And she's like, oh my God. And he was like, yeah, right. And then I think, so that's what I'm saying, is I think his plan was that way beforehand. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying that's what it felt like, at least, where he was like, he had this whole like murder lined out and thought of. And then I think that the fact that she was like getting upset and getting frustrated and gonna call somebody to try and hear him out and all that kind of stuff. He's like, I need to buy some time, and I need her just to, at least I could be wrong. But
meanwhile, I think breaking it to her the night before is genius. This way, she calls her friends and she tells them we're going out of town.
Spreads the news.
Anything she says to the dry cleaner, to the maid, is her voice, the correct time.
Yeah, corroborates his side of the story.
Exactly. So this person is obviously, he's a thinker. He's thought his way through this whole thing. Right. And like I'm saying, we're just at the top of this episode. This is a show, supposedly, at least right now, about Columbo. And we're like probably 30 minutes into this, and we haven't even seen Hide Nor Hair. Haha. Jinx.
Where's my soda?
No, it's mine.
No, mine.
You give me one because I jinxed you.
No, mine.
I already said it. I was talking first, and then you took it from me.
No, give me my drink.
Nope. Anyway, so...
coming up on People's Court.
No, it's mine.
Give me that fucking
I jinxed
drink.
you. I jinxed you first. So this guy is like getting all his stuff ready, and again, in every step of the way, you're like, okay, he's really like covering his tracks. He's doing all his stuff.
Yeah.
And then in a weird way, it's so heartless and it's so cold. What happens? Like he ends up getting these gloves out, and he like is about to,
real fancy ones.
Yeah,
too.
you can tell like he's about to do the deed, and you're like, oh man. And then I love the little. I don't think it was supposed to be comedic. Maybe it was supposed to be.
No, I think it was.
Yeah, he has his hands behind his back, and of course, like his wife is like, look at how beautiful at night it is. Oh, it's so perfect.
Perfect weather for flying.
Yeah, exactly. It's so clear. And then like he has his hands out like he's gonna get her, and then of course then she kind of turns around and goes like, oh, and like he hides his hand behind his back like, oh yes, what a perfect day for flying.
Would you shut those drapes?
Yeah, right. He tries to be all God,
And yeah, these people being so uncomfortable with each other in a way. Like, she's like perfectly like. Makes me believe that she is 20 in her mind of like, let's go on this romantic weekend. I brought like 2 changes of clothes. I'm not gonna need any of them.
Right. Well, and so like,
meanwhile he's just like, don't touch me.
And that's the thing is, I think that his whole character, the entire time, kind of feels like that. Where he feels like the only time he feels really, I would say, I don't want to get too far ahead. the only time he feels like the actor was giving emotion, and I feel like it was a choice, was whenever he was talking with Columbo a lot of times. He there was like some real moments where he was like under the pressure, and you could tell like the actor was like making some decisions. So I wouldn't think this is like, I'm not saying this as like he's a bad actor. I think he was doing a good job of portraying he has no real love in these one of these this apathy in both of these relationships where he's like, just I love you, of course. And you're like, that. I don't believe it, buddy. But the second you get caught, or you potentially get caught, and you're like, there's like the pressure's getting put on. You're like, what do you mean?
You're starting to bother me.
You're blaming me, and you're like, hey, okay, wow. Now now you're feeling some feelings.
Calm down. I ain't pointing no fingers.
But anyways, so again, just like I said before, he ends up strangling her from behind. Leaves her there, tries to like grab some silverware, grab some candlesticks.
Ends up making it look like a robbery.
Right. Open some drawers and also
ruffle some clothes, sits in the bed, makes it look like she was sleeping there.
Punches the pillow a good couple times.
Just once. One little
that's all it takes. Done.
Right.
One of the things I like about this is that it shows how quickly someone can be murdered. Right when he starts strangling her, the phone starts to ring.
Yeah.
And he's already strangled her. She collapses to the floor, and he picks up the phone. I mean, just that quick.
Yeah.
And then he's told his mistress how to get into their apartment, and she comes up, and she's wearing the glasses and the dress and can completely transform into a different person.
Right.
In a matter of minutes as well. And all of her stuff goes in the same bag, and you'd never know.
Right.
Other than the fact her skin's like 60 years younger.
And then, of course, what was the law? Or he said it's
the law of expectation, I think.
Right, or something like that.
You see what you want to see.
Right. Because she's getting kind of worried now. And he's like, you are dressed like my wife, and you are going to be with me, so therefore people will think that you're my wife. That's just the way it works. And I was like, he's not 100% wrong, but, I mean, this is also...
It's a very thin veil to put that much faith in.
But this is also the 60s. So what I'm saying is, like, in 1968, you could probably get away with that. I mean, if you don't run into somebody that you absolutely know, and someone just walks around with glasses and, of course, you don't get a real good look at them, they could go like, oh, yeah, that's my wife. I mean, you could probably get away with it today nowadays. What I'm saying is, like, in, like, a murder case, you know what I mean? Like, there's probably less forensics and
stakes are raised.
Yeah.
To mix movies, in District 9, you had like 90% of these like crustacean aliens had no mind.
The prawns.
And 10% you could tell were keen-minded. I was like, dude, no way. I started walking around my life. I was like, I'm talking to a prawn right now.
Yeah.
There's someone
I call it NPC energy.
Yes. There are people that I know who walk up and will call me the wrong name because they think I look like one of my brothers.
Oh, wow.
The brother I'm mistaken for is almost 6 inches taller than me and about 30 pounds heavier than me.
Okay, yeah. So
the other
a different person.
But in the time that this happened a lot, he was a full head taller than me. My other brother got mistaken for was a full head shorter than me.
Damn. Wow.
I was the thinnest. My youngest brother is very stocky, very built. And my older brother is tall, but he's big.
Right.
And so it's one of those
you have
things
like different people, like different body types,
all shapes and sizes.
And it's like, how can you possibly mistake me for them? Like, so like the powers of observation are so weak. They see a loosely bearded person and go, I know who that is.
I know exactly who that is.
So yeah.
Right, yeah.
So you see the gray hair, the blue dress, like walking through.
Right.
I think it was less to fool friends, because who else did they know is going to be on the Acapulco flight at 10 o'clock at night?
You're right. That's what I'm saying. Is I think in reality, any sort of stewardess would be like, oh yeah, that's just his wife, because he called her his wife.
Who am I to ask?
Exactly, right.
Gray hair or not, I'm like, I don't care. He's some kind of cradle robbing perv. Oh, God. He bought a ticket.
He's a doctor. It's fine.
Let's hope he gets the fish.
Right. Oh, God. Jesus. So anyways.
That's totally flight attendant justice there.
Right.
I'm giving him the fish.
Yeah. So they end up like causing a scene on the plane. It's all planned. So his mistress is an actress. And so she like plays this part really well, and she's all upset and storms off the plane. He's like, oh my gosh. So it looks like he's going on this trip by himself. And he disposes of all the silverware and throws all the stuff away. And of course makes it seem like
dumps it in the ocean.
Exactly. Just makes it seem like it's all like no one could find it or whatever.
Like, whatever.
Yeah, you know. So he gets back, and of course there's, and I was like, I would be so terrified if I walked into my place and saw what I saw in this show.
Yeah.
The window is like boarded up, and there's just like
the outline of his wife.
There's a white tape outline on the ground, and he just like walks in and is like kind of like moving around, you know?
Yeah, it's like he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, right.
A little point later on.
Exactly.
He just doesn't say anything.
And
it's like, what the fuck is...
as we're watching our killer like look out the window and go, it's kind of a pretty day. We see this guy in this raincoat walk out, chomping on a cigar in a truly disgusting manner, and then casually leans against this guy's bar while he's full on watching him from behind, just enjoy the day.
Yeah.
Our psychiatrist guy turns around and goes, "Who are you?" He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry to bother you, sir. I'm Lieutenant Columbo. I was just taking a look around, and I'm sure you must have some questions."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, what happened here? It's like,
you may want to take.
You may want to sit down. Like, well, will you tell me, like, sir, I really think you ought to sit down.
I think you ought to sit down.
Please, you know, like, don't keep something from me. What happened to my wife? Where's Carol? Something happened to her? I was like,
right.
Well, I'm sorry, someone trying to break in the other night and tried to kill her.
And this dumbass responds with, tried to kill her?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, she's still alive.
You ought to be happy, ain't you?
Yeah.
Well, where is she?
Right.
In the fucking hospital, you dunce rails.
Yeah.
Something that I just love about Columbo is when you go to speak like Columbo, you find yourself apologizing for just about everything and being super polite. Like, this guy he's not the noir guy who comes in and is like, yeah, that doctor walked in and it was like a cool breeze on a hot day.
Right.
Yeah. Chilled me to the bone. I could feel something off about him. Instead, when we first meet Columbo, we have almost no idea what's going through his head. He's sitting there and he's like, I'm so sorry this happened. You know, I just have a couple of questions, routine things. But we see him just taking notes of everything that he sees, and we're just waiting for him to drop the hammer on this guy.
For me, his character, at least in this first episode that I watched, it really reads like the guy that knows more than he's letting on, and he waits for you to say something. Every time he says something, he kind of plays ignorant, like, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
I'm just a little guy. Just a silly little guy.
I didn't realize it. Like, he kind of has that sort of mannerism where he was like, forgive me, like I didn't understand. And like,
you're probably right.
But it reads like this. He's always known, but he's playing as if he doesn't know, kind of thing. And it's just this quiet confidence of like, even if he doesn't know, he's like, would you believe it?
It's
like
the perfect like faux facade
for a
detective to have.
And I love it because it really, especially in this power dynamic where like he may not have the degrees or may not be as intelligent on paper as this psychiatrist. There's just these little things where like even right now, he kind of is like playing dumb, not like stupid, like he's like a comedic character, but just kind of like, again, just this casual ignorance about this scenario of like, I wonder how we're gonna get him, and it's like you feel like you're being tricky on this one,
but at the same time, we get the idea of just how thorough he's being.
Every little remark is a piece of bait.
Oh yeah.
Well, and just in the sense of like, you know, we're just wondering, could you make a list of things that were stolen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I looked, I only saw one picture of your wife. No, we did go ahead and send that down to the airport, and they did tell us your wife was there, which was good, and that you brought 2 pieces of luggage with you. But one was overweight. And
he's like, well, what did she say? And he's like, well, she did in fact verify that was your wife. And he's like, oh, okay.
Sigh of relief.
Yeah, it's just these little comments like that where he's like, well, what'd she say? And you're like, well, you'd be happy to know that she did identify as your wife, so you're fine, you know.
For now.
I'm watching you.
And again, one of the things that I like about this show is you're listening for people who have abnormal reactions. Like, I told you your wife was on the plane,
Yeah.
and you asked me, what did the stewardess say about her? Like,
Yeah.
said that she was your wife?
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird question to ask there,
But
bro.
redundant, don't you think?
Yeah. There's a
Why
couple.
would that even be in question?
But the thing is, like, as opposed to many other crime shows where, like, sometimes they're little, like, there's one piece of evidence that's, like, crucial to the whole thing.
Mhm.
This guy really has, like, kind of made it out,
Oh, yeah.
is what it feels
He
like.
already knows.
Right. And so, like, even whenever they go to the hospital and they start, like, you know, he tries to start.
The hospital scene is my favorite.
Oh, man.
Well, why don't you go ahead and take this since it was your favorite part?
All right. So this man rushes as best he can manage, given the circumstances, to go see his wife in the hospital
Who he has been told is
in a comatose state.
Right.
Now,
And the panic that he has feels a little put on.
yeah, of course. I don't know about you guys, but phone call be damned. I'm going to the hospital straight away.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't. Now, this is by suggestion of Columbo. It's like, I might be the station. They know I'm here. So you may want to answer that.
No. So he hears that his wife is in the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and he wants to rush off immediately.
Right.
And Columbo stops him at the door when the phone's ringing.
Mm-hmm.
And he picks it up, and turns out it's somebody else,
Yeah.
his mistress.
Mm-hmm.
He leaves it and goes to walk out, and the phone rings a second time.
Yeah.
And Columbo says it might be the hospital.
Yeah.
And
It might be the hospital. They know that I'm here.
And of course, that's when he picks it up, and it's his mistress, and he rushes off to the hospital. And yeah, if my wife was not quite dead and could rat me out any second.
Oh yeah. And there's this. I didn't recognize this, but I'm assuming that on the phone call he must have said something about like a patient, or he overheard her name or something.
He said, "Speak to my secretary for the appointment at 2
She'll
o'clock."
have it all sorted out.
Mhm.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, there later in the episode, whenever he talks about her, I think he says her last name, and he's like, "Oh, the girl that was on the phone that called you," or whatever. Yeah.
So there are 3 parts to that. So first, before they rush off to the hospital, which Dylan's going to talk about,
Yeah.
when he received the call and he was like, "No, I got to go to the hospital," Columbo's like, "Well, it might be the hospital." Picks up, it's his mistress, and he just says, "Speak to my secretary about that. Schedule 2 o'clock tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and go." Hangs up and leaves. The next day, Columbo shows up at his office at 2 o'clock.
Oh, I see.
And that's when he's leaving, he's like, "Oh, excuse me, doctor, your 2 o'clock is here." Columbo's walking out, sees her, and goes,
Right.
"Excuse me, what's your name?"
Yeah.
Something Hudson.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all. And walks off like, oh.
Yeah.
So later on, he goes, "Oh, that was Joanne." It's like, "Oh,
I think it was Joan.
Joan.
Yeah.
That was Joan." Like, "Oh, the person you spoke to on the phone."
Yeah, whenever before we left. So it was
What?
like, so I didn't fully put that together until like he said that. I was like, "Oh yeah, so he must have like he really put that together."
Oh, yeah, dude.
Which is so cool. And it's like things like that. These like little bitty things that keep getting like
He
trickled
catches
in.
everything.
Yeah.
And we'll see, that's one thing that I love is
Very thorough.
is he has like little pieces of silk, like the silk thread, and that's, you just hand me this little one, makes like
Yeah.
one more turn,
Yeah.
and at the end of the episode, he just jerks that needle, and they all singe up, and you have no escape.
Right.
Mhm.
So the hospital. So again, quote unquote rushes there.
Right. Gets to the hospital, heads to the reception desk. "Excuse me, I've heard my wife is a patient interred here. I'd like to see her, please." It's like, well, I'll have to check.
Oh,
and see
she's
if the
in critical. There's no
Right,
There's
I
no,
can't really. He might be in the middle of surgery. It's like, I don't care. Have him come down here and meet me right away. And as
Is it Fleming? Is that his name?
There we go, Ray Fleming.
Mhm.
Tell him it's Dr. Fleming and get him
Right.
here now. He's
Yeah.
like, okay, geez, they're throwing the name around.
Yeah. So as he is able to get him like on the line in the hospital, starts making a fuss. His attorney,
his friend,
buddy,
who is the district attorney,
yes, walks up and is like, if there's anything you can do for my friend, please don't hesitate. He's a very good friend of mine. And then Columbo brings up the point. It's like, I noticed something a little weird whenever
But he phrases it like as if he's still like quote unquote thinking about it.
Yeah. He's
like
just
he's
pondering.
He's still like working around it. And he's like, something kind of weird happened.
Yeah, it just occurred to me how different some folks are. I was searching the apartment. I hear him walk in, and he doesn't say anything. Normally, when I get home from work, first thing I do is say, "Honey, are you here?" But there was nothing.
Isn't that kind of weird how people are different?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Are you trying to make a claim?
Is
You trying to make a claim on my friend? I told you."
Point? No,
not making
point.
any
I don't
points.
know. I'm just was saying. And he's like, "No, don't you dare make all these accusations about my
It's a very
friend."
tough time for him right now.
Right.
I will not have you making tactless remarks
Yes.
at his expense.
Okay, all right.
I want you to do what you can. Like, I will do what I can, sir.
Quickly, I hope. And he's like, just
This
give him
could be a
look.
real feather in your cap to have this all
Yeah.
sorted out as soon as possible.
Right.
Bribery.
Right. At first, this has me thinking, oh, he's just fucking in on this. He knows.
Yeah.
But later on, that's evidently disproven, and he was none the wiser. He's just trying to do a favor for his buddy.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one that I think that's what I thought when I first saw it, was just this guy wants to help his friend,
Right.
but he has no idea who his friend
No.
is. We have no idea who's walking down the street, what's in her purse.
Mhm.
We don't know what's happening on the other end of the phone when they're not picking up.
Yeah.
We don't know who our friends are. No one deserves a miscarriage of justice. No one deserves to be
Right.
looked over. I don't care how good friends we are. The
Yeah.
full weight of the justice system
Yeah.
should fall on you.
Well, but I mean, at that point in time, they're just a bunch of rich people
Yeah,
like that.
Fat
So they're
cats
all,
looking out for each
Yeah,
other.
Well,
exactly.
it doesn't matter what time period you're in. If you have connections or favor or
heck,
money.
yeah. When it always pays to know somebody.
bruh.
Oh, yeah.
Gee, we're gonna throw out a name.
Jesus.
I was gonna say for myself, like, yeah, I even in my own professional life, sometimes I have realized that knowing people and like being good friends with people has really paid its way in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Even the current job I'm at right now, I'm like, man, I really got it in good,
Mm-hmm.
and now it has paid off to know somebody and be in a place of security. But yeah, so at this point in time, like this felt like one of the first like TV show moments
Yeah.
for me at least. Is and I thought I kind of chuckled, but it is like it's a coincidence, and I understand like it probably has happened before. But like he tries to go into the elevator, and Columbo's like, "Oh, I better go with you, Doc." And he's
Right.
like, "Well, why?" And he's like, "Oh, we got him."
One of our guys is at the door.
Exactly. So they
This
go.
is- This is my favorite part.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Whenever they walk up to the room that she's being kept in, they stop him at the door, of course. It's like, my orders are to prevent entry no matter what. And then the doctor comes out. and it's like,
Coincidentally.
I have grave news for you. Your wife has passed.
And may I say, this again is a show from 1968.
Yeah.
So like, there's all
Well-
these like, the soundtrack is all this like,
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's like
It's creepy.
It's all this
I
like,
like it.
orchestral, but it's like low quality because again, it's all like on film or whatever. So it has this sort of like, it just the score of the whole show. It just feels so intrinsically of that time because I've seen many shows. My mom
And-
loves shows from the 60s and 70s. So
And
it
this is
actually
the one.
reminded me of the score from Alien.
yeah, you're right.
And this episode, I think, has the most musical cues. And Dr. Fleming has his own score.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it.
His leitmotif.
Yeah.
And you can tell when he's about to commit a murder or when he's
Do
really
something,
nervous.
Yeah.
So, anyways, in this moment, whenever he says that, he's like, "Your wife just passed," and he's like, and it's like, horse, so like,
Did she say anything?
it pans in on his face, and I think it actually cuts to commercial at that point. and then she's like, "Well, if it's any consolation, she said your name."
The one thing she did say.
Yeah.
What's your name?
What's your name?
Now,
If it means anything. And he's like, oh, God.
right. Saved by the Reaper. Holy
right.
shit.
If you say that, woo. And I
2
just feel like,
seconds away from being found out.
Yeah.
Tried to kill me.
yeah.
Or so we thought.
And then, of course, Columbo was just like, said your name. How interesting.
Kinda weird.
Yeah. Gosh, what a...
We'll find out why I like that scene so much later.
Uh-oh. Why is that? I guess
I said later.
okay, fine.
We
fine.
haven't gotten to that point yet.
Well, it's later now.
Okay, fine.
So this is what... So at this point in time, we get, like, to this, I would say, like, second act of the movie. Or I guess show, whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
We've gotten through, like, the building up stage. We've gotten through, like, the killing section. Like, all... Now we're, like, in this kind of, like, now what's going to happen here? Because, like, the wife is dead now. And now it's kind of like... Now we're just, like, transitioning over to, like... Well, now what? Because obviously we got our guy Columbo here.
Mm-hmm.
We already got the backstory. What happened? How to get us to this point? And now we're like, okay, now we're tipping over now to like the meat of like what's happening here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring in another detective show here and to compare and contrast what I call good fate and bad fates.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could get real wild and bring it over the hedge, but I'm not going to do that.
Oh gosh.
In Monk, you know, he's this detective, and it's one of those shows wherever he is, there's a murder that's going to happen, and he has to solve it, that kind of thing. Just happens to be, and the show's kind of like he has bad karma, but I don't see it that way. The fates know that if they allow a murder to happen, let's say there's like a murder quota up there.
Right.
If we want this guy to get caught, we have to put him around Monk and allow him to kill this person here. With Columbo, this is where the fates shift. The fates are with Dr. Fleming, like, how are we going to help this guy get away with it?
Yeah.
We'll make the phone call just the right amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
His trip to Acapulco is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, he had, his wife is going to die right before. Like everything seems to be leaving that could catch him. But Columbo's right there, you know, just like a locomotive, like just chugging along, not any faster, not any slower than he was before, just slowly picking up these little rocks, and soon you're gonna look up and it's a brick wall around you.
And even once we get started on this section right here, there's a caveat where he called he had his mistress call like dry cleaning to pick up these clothes that are going to be set outside the door. Mm-hmm. And then of course whenever she comes back to put the dress and all the clothes in there and get rid of the wig and all that kind of stuff, so that way it all like matches up that again the clothes that she was wearing are not there, or you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the one thing that she forgot, and of course he gets kind of flustered and angry. And that's what I'm saying about like the actor. He plays angry pretty well when he's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, we went over this. Like, you're not supposed to forget something. And she's like, I forgot the gloves. I'm sorry. And then he's like, well, we got to figure out something. So, like, the dress is already taken away, but the gloves aren't. And so he has to go, like, run by his house, even though Columbo was just there talking about that scene where he actually was able to meet Joan for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And so Columbo was going to go there later that afternoon. And so he has to like take the gloves back and like kind of pretend like I found them out of nowhere. And then Columbo's like, I guess, lockpicking his door. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Doc. I didn't want to bother you. So I was going to come look around.
Save us both the trouble.
Right. I thought you weren't supposed to be here. And he's like, well, I couldn't waste any time either. You know, I just had to think about it. And, you know, I found something.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he found the gloves. And then shortly afterwards, the dress shows up, and he was like, oh, it's at the dry cleaners. It all makes sense.
Of course.
Right? It's all these coincidental things.
You're right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It was off the cleaners.
Mm-hmm.
That adds up. And and that does match the description.
Yeah,
and you see, we were able to speak with the stewardess. She's actually back in town now.
Yeah.
So,
So we're gonna go ahead and get her.
Yeah. And your wife was wearing blue wool brass buttons, just like that. That's good. That's good.
Interesting. Isn't it funny how those things work out?
Yeah.
I love he says that I think once or twice. I think it's really great. How he's like,
what do you know about that?
He walks away. He walks away and turns around and goes, isn't it funny how things like that happen? I tell you. And he walks away and it's like, He just, I feel like
it's like he's not even twisting the knife. He's just like jutting it, nudging it ever so slightly.
The funny thing, I just love how he lingers. It's like just when you think he's gonna
Like,
go
one
away,
more thing.
Yeah, just when you think he's gonna go away, and you're like, and you can tell the killer is like, I'm about to let go.
Right on the
He's always like, man, what do you know? Ain't it funny? Ain't it crazy?
Why,
huh?
just this other day, I was
Yeah,
thinking
just
about
was-
a situation just like this.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
He does that a handful of times. You're like, oh
It's
man,
the
it just
greatest.
dances on your last nerve.
And he's Columbo for me is just so lovable. So he's walking around the psychiatrist's office. It's like, man, I just keep expecting to see a couch. Oh no, I don't have a couch.
Yeah,
bad for patient posture. Bad for posture. That's a good one. I'll have to remember that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Looking around, it's like, man, you have a lot of cool pieces here. I love this table. You see, my cousin, she's got this really weird table.
Yeah, got a kidney-shaped table.
I don't know what to say when I'm around.
I hate
Your
stand
room
to
is
see
really
it.
great for conversation. Meanwhile, her husband hasn't said anything in 2 years. I think the table got to him a long time ago.
What are you here for, Columbo, Lieutenant Columbo? What are you here for? Oh, well,
Well, you see, I have these things, a couple more routine questions. Just
Tying
Just
up
trying to
loose
loose
ends.
ends.
just gotta
because
tie up the loose ends.
these things, they bother me. And just,
Yeah, no.
I'm just like, and like, I'm trying to, like, well, for what? I'm like, well, for instance, the 13 pounds you were overweight. Did you know you had?
Yes, I put it on my credit card.
And we actually brought more luggage
Yeah.
than we needed. Okay, well, what happened to those?
Yeah.
Well, trade journals, magazines. Oh, I see.
Nine pounds worth.
So so that'd be the 13 sorry, the 4 pounds.
I think it was 9. It was 9 pounds over.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, so that makes sense as to why you were 9 pounds over.
But only 4 pounds when you came back.
Right.
Yeah.
So what
So I assume you read them, and because you read them.
Yes, they were all mostly advertising stuff. And you're like,
I see.
okay.
I see. Now,
Okay.
now
It's
I
like,
have
and
a
he's-
question about. Did you do any fishing when you were up there? What? You see, I'm an avid fisher.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Dude.
real
And my
bug
wife
for
and we
fishing.
were looking for a spot there, and I just want to make sure that I'm gonna be in a clean spot.
And it's
because,
and it's always and it's moments like this whenever you can tell.
He indirectly hits the nail on the head.
Oh, and I mean, he says it because he's like, because he us as the audience knows this because we just
Right.
watched him take all the he took all the luggage, all the stuff's happening, and you're like, oh, he's catching on. He may have been able to find something, and then just whenever he kind of finishes that statement, he goes,
Oh, wait! I want to finish this.
"You like? Go ahead."
I'm just trying to find a good fishing spot because you go into some of these smaller places and there's just so much rubbish around. People
Yeah.
just
Dumping
throwing their stuff
everything
into the
overboard.
ocean. But well, I don't suppose you took those trade journals on the boat with you, did you?
No. But the thing is, like, it's as I was saying before, it's moments like that where you think where subverting expectation is really cool in this because like you think he's going to talk about like he must have had something on there or talk about to kind of elaborate more about that, but once he kind of finishes a statement of sorts, he just hits it with like, what do you think about fishing, huh? And of course our murderer Ray is like, now what is this about? And it's like, oh you were like cool,
It's like, whoa,
you were all
bro.
fine up until then, and now all of a sudden I start talking about something different. You're like, now why are you bothering me with all these questions? I don't understand. And you're like, oh, okay. I see what it is.
I go to we're having a conversation about coffee tables. I bring up fishing and you get real weirded out. I don't understand. I thought you liked fishing.
Later on, there's a guy who claims that he's the killer, and of course he's like, kind of going crazy or whatever. And
Right before this scene, I want to say because I think it ties into this.
Go ahead.
He's going through and Columbo's asking the psychiatrist one of two conversations they have about just a hypothetical killer. I'm trying to understand
I
him
forgot that came before
psychologically.
that. That's a
And he
good.
goes like, well, I know that this guy's got to be pretty smart, and maybe smarter than me, but you see, he's an amateur. These guys have one chance, but we cops, and we're not known for being the brightest bunch, but we
do this hundreds of times.
Yeah, we do this 100 times a year, and that's a lot of practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so later on, they're in the police room, the interrogation. I don't want to step on what you were saying.
No, I forgot the order of things because that's a great conversation. This is the first time where I would say that Ray unintentionally admits what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
He does. He does a sly way of talking around it. I forgot that this came before, so this is a good thing to say because he at this point in time, Columbo has kind of bothered him a little more, and he's
upset.
He's like, I think I need to actually get you as a psychiatrist. I need to I need some help or whatever. And he's like, oh, okay.
That comes later.
Really?
So they have this it's the interrogation, and then the DA, and then the pressure.
Okay.
Conversation.
Well, whatever happens. So you're right.
I've seen this episode once or
twice.
That's
fine. So again, I've only watched it once, and it was last night. And again, I've had a long day since then, so I'm totally okay with being forgetful. Anyways, I guess we'll go around to the first topic. There's a guy who claims to be the killer, is most certainly not the killer, and obviously I think Columbo knows that.
Right.
But then, what is the kind of the funny thing about it all is whenever the guy leaves and Ray is like,
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it.
Can I talk about the interrogation?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So this guy is sitting there, he's like, oh, well, thank you for coming down. He clicks the turn on the tape recorder. He's like, well, so I killed Mrs. Fleming.
Yeah.
Right. So what did you take? Some candlesticks and some jewelry, and was there anything else? Any cash? She had about $30 in her purse. And where do you sell it? Who do you sell it to? What did he give you for it?
I sold it to a guy, far away or whatever.
Why should I rat him out?
Yeah, right.
Right.
How much did you get for it? And he's like, what does it matter? I said I killed her.
Why Mrs. Fleming? And so they're just all of these he knew exactly what to ask, and just these things of, I need you to answer all of these questions.
Yeah.
And I think that feeds so well from he's an amateur. We do this 100 times a year. Columbo is just boom, 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 with so much caring. He was looking straight through this guy, and you could tell by the way he was asking, I know you're acting. I know you're lying to me. If you really did this, you could tell me all of these things.
Yeah. Crazy. But then, Ray is like, I'm not. It's not real. I don't believe it all. And he's like, oh, okay. And this is where, But
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew what was stolen.
Yeah. It's no, but then, I think there was some points that he was able to talk to him on. But then this is where they push in that whole the whole fishing trip thing where he's like, so what do you think about fishing and that kind of stuff? Where it's okay, now he's asking the right questions to Ray, and of course he's like, this is I think the first time in the show where he's like, you're not. I think either he says directly I'm not the one who killed her, or so do you think I'm? Are you trying to blame me for it? And he's like, no,
you couldn't have done that.
Why would I go?
You were out of town.
Yeah, you were out of town. You were fine.
How could you have?
Well, then, what do you think I did? Do you think I hired this guy to kill her?
No,
that's
because I already.
You wouldn't do that.
I was gonna say, but it's the emphasis. Oh no, you wouldn't do that. You do someone else. I was like, right. Yeah. Oh well, how can you be so sure? Because I already asked him.
Yeah. Oh. This is a trap. I think you said something about how do I know that you're not the one who hired him? This is all a trap to try and get me or whatever. Right. It's you could be right, but
it's Doc, why would I do that?
Why would I do that?
But one of the details that the liar gave was that there was initials on the suitcase.
Yeah.
And Mr. Fleming said, I don't have, and he goes, oh, that's good. See, I was going to check on that. You said that there were.
Mm-hmm. I think the big thing was that he said that he strangled her from the front, or I think is what he said, when actually she was strangled from the back.
That actually, I think, is a plot hole in this show, because he said she started to scream and I covered her mouth. Mm-hmm. And Columbo assumed they were facing each other.
Right.
But you can also cover someone's mouth from behind.
Well, yeah, I guess you're right. But
for this show and for the flow of things, also a weird time to like, pitch for it, but this is on Amazon Prime. It's on Freevee, so if you guys have Prime, it is free to you guys. Go and watch this.
It's really
7 seasons
so far
of amazing detective work.
I loved the show so far. From what I've seen of this one, I'm really for it.
It's a disservice not to watch it.
The one thing that I can say, and this is what I was want to say at the top that I'm saving for right now, is that Mallory and I are having a little bit of a blast from the past. I have never fully watched the anime Death Note, but I have watched like a majority of it, or I've watched like portions of it.
Yeah.
And so this is the first like full run through of it, and it's really good. I'm loving it. I mean, obviously there's like it's a bit heavy and it's weird in moments, but to be honest, like it is so intrinsically 2007 and 2008. It feels like my teenage years, and I love it. God. I love it, and it kind of is like making me a little nostalgic in a way, and I love it. Anyways, those like hard emo, metal rocker days, like it was my childhood. Or no, it was my teenage years, my high school years. I don't want to say childhood.
Chicken nuggets and death. Like,
I mean, you'd be surprised. My dad and I listened to some rock when I was younger. Anyways, the character of Columbo, at least in this facet of this first episode, reminds me so much of like the main detective L in Death Note. Again, very different characters, but the same sort of thing of like he's a calm and collected guy, and he may say something, he may give you
a little weird.
It may be a little weird, but he'll give you a question or he'll say something or whatever, and then he'll let you kind of respond and say some stuff and go, interesting.
Okay.
Well, in fact, I was testing you and you passed. That was great. And you're like, wait, what? And he's like, well, and like
jail for you.
Exactly right. So it's all these things that kind of build up to where like you realize that he's so farther ahead of you when you think like, oh, he's caught. You're like, nah. He's already a handful of steps ahead of you. And it's like, actually, you thought you got me, but I got you. And you're like, damn, that's so good.
Yep. And again, not even in a Sherlock way of like, oh, don't you know? It's like using that kind of it's just my job going through a couple of things.
Yeah.
Right.
But didn't you say the other day? I'm sorry, I must have been remembering that wrong. See, I forget things all the time.
Right. I'm human too.
And what I love about that is like, tell me another story. Because I don't remember the first one you told me. You can tell me anything you want.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, that's like, right. Okay, so then you couldn't have done that because you were over here doing this. That makes sense.
Yeah.
He writes a whole new note. Okay, I get it. And like, we all know that's garbage. Columbo knows it's garbage.
He's
Everyone
just
in the room knows it's
doodling.
garbage. He's like, okay, so this guy's feeling some kind of pressure. He's feeling like he's running out of room. He's going to change his story.
Like for like a good for instance in here is you have in the show, without spoiling too much, there's this kid who is the killer. His father is the police chief, and the detective L is like trying to figure out this whole situation. And again, he has this opportunity where like all of them are in the same room, and he's like, all of you guys can leave except for this kid or whatever. And he's like, well, why is that? And he's like, and at this point in time, like the kid has like really covered his tracks a whole lot. So you're like, oh, he's really good. And then at that point in time, he's like, no, I still suspect that he's the killer. And he's like, wait, what do you mean? Like he's already proven that that's not the case. And he's like, yeah, but that's actually not true because this and this and this. And you're like, oh my god, what is going on? He's like, holy shit, he has him locked. And the thing is, like his like prediction is almost verbatim what happened. So you're like, man, he's got his stuff locked down. So it just feels like a very similar character. I'm like watching this Columbo character really just like ask the right questions and just kind of push in those key areas, and not just like right off the bat. It's like you just kind of like step into it and then start like pushing on those soft spots really hard, and you're like, oh man, they're breaking. Do you want to go ahead and talk about what you were saying? You said you want to talk about something later.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a bit. That's like at the end.
Okay. Well, what I was gonna say next is like because we're kind of wrap up.
Oh yeah.
The scene where he meets Joan. Joan.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He meets her.
I was wrong earlier.
Well, that's okay. No, I just second guessed myself if you couldn't tell. He's meeting with Joan at her place of work. She's an actress, so she's on set or whatever. Man, it was such an intense scene, but it fully fleshed out his character like like knowing the full story already
Mhm.
before going there. And so like it's just like the way in which he carried himself, the way in which he was like asking the right questions and just giving enough to like to
And showing
know?
that her lies, like where they were.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was going through, and he's like just looking at his papers, which we don't see Columbo do.
Oh yeah, he has his briefcase. He like has these folders he's opening up, and he's trying to ask her some questions.
He asks her routine questions, and for those who are going to watch this scene, this is the only time in this show, and I'm 4 seasons in, that Columbo ever yells. And so
Really?
this is something that I think they were experimenting with the character.
Yeah.
Because what I love about Columbo is his arrests are always so classy.
Right.
For the first 3 seasons, usually he catches the killer, and they share this moment of,
You got me.
I did it. I can't. And
Yeah, there's nothing else I
and
can
a
do.
lot of
I
like,
can't deal with you anymore.
and like in psych stuff, like going through and the person like, yes, I did it, and they realize, oh no, I confessed.
Yeah.
And this one's like,
got
honestly,
me.
I'm kind of glad you caught me.
It just feels. it really feels like a checkmate
Yeah.
where there's nothing else you can say. You're just like, I mean,
Except
you
he's
really
had him in checkmate for most of the game.
right. But it's like, but at least you make
it's like you're making that check move, and you just like keep moving your
Nope.
king to
Nope.
like 2
Nope.
squares.
Nope. Yeah, check. But at this moment, again, he just asks her like it just feels like another like routine checkup where he just like he comes back in and he's talking about his stuff.
Has a popsicle.
Yeah, he's finishing off a popsicle, whatever, and he's kind of jovial like he always is, where he's just like, it's crazy how some of these things work, And what is the first couple of questions that he asks? I can't remember verbatim. Didn't he ask like something simple where it's like?
Well, he goes, how long have you been in a relationship with Dr. Fleming? Like,
Right.
well, Dr. Fleming is my psychiatrist. Like,
Right.
Okay.
Right,
so
right,
I was
yeah.
just wondering, I'm sure you've heard of this. Oh, yes, what happened to Mrs. Fleming? Right. So we just have a couple questions about that. So
Yeah.
it's like, well, I don't know why you're here. You were taken off the case. Like, oh, no, actually, I wasn't.
Yeah.
But also, how did you hear about that?
I love how he was,
Dr. Fleming called me.
yeah.
Oh, so he called you at home. Is a doctor in the habit of doing that?
Yeah.
Well, no. It's like,
I love how but before he says all that stuff right that Dominic just said, he was like, you see, my higher up,
He's
he
very
heard,
smart.
he's a very smart guy, and he heard some things going on, and he was like, you know what, Columbo, I feel like some people are trying to get some things done, and I think you're hitting a soft spot, so I want you to keep you on the case.
Yeah.
Well, he's a really smart guy.
Yeah.
Like, I like to get things done.
Mm.
And then he talks about that. He's like, so how did you hear about that, though? And like, again, kind of presses
Nails.
farther. Yeah. Well, no, go ahead. Yeah.
So as he's like reaching to his bag, pulling out stuff, he's asking her questions, and he pulls out the pair of sunglasses she was wearing.
Yeah.
And her eyes go wide, and she stiffs up, like, what is it? Have you
Yeah,
seen
look
a pair of
surprised.
sunglasses?
Right.
Should be surprised at a pair of sunglasses.
Yes, of course it's in, like, would you like to try them on? No, I'm not going to try those on. Like,
Yeah, I don't need to.
oh, that's okay.
Is there a reason I should?
No, there's no reason you should wear them. But just so we're clear, there's no reason you shouldn't either. And
Right.
just like,
I'm going to get my lawyer.
you see, I find that so strange. You see, I come in here and I'm talking to you about Dr. Fleming maybe killing his wife, and the next thing I hear is you talking about getting your lawyer.
Yeah.
You weren't involved in this, were you?
Right.
And he's got her.
I'm not saying anything. I'm going to get my lawyer.
Uh-huh.
And then
And that's okay, man.
that's fine.
But when
can
you
that.
do, when he asks you for what you're being charged for, it's accessory to murder. And it's like,
right. You're like,
Oh, damn.
He already has her hook, line, and of course, where does she slip up? She says Ray. She says his first name, and it's the first thing with the glasses. It's and again like the whole like phone call with him about
First
how
name basis.
first name basis, and he's like, oh, so you're just in the habit of calling him Ray now, and it's like I didn't know you
Right.
could do that with your doctor.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and this is where he gets, like I said, elevated. And I don't think that it feels out of character either, because then he's like, he really just nails into her and is like, I think he's trying, obviously he says this later, but like, he like just starts like, I mean, getting down of like, go ahead.
See, it's not just one little thing.
No.
What about the sunglasses?
Yeah.
What about the luggage? What about the argument on the plane?
Mm-hmm.
Where he was like, what about all these things? I think this is what sets him off. He goes, well, were you there when she was killed? No.
Oh, right,
so
right.
you came in after.
Right.
And so she's like,
I'm going to get my lawyer.
Must have been quite a shock.
Yeah.
And so he's laying into her about these things. And we learn this later about Columbo, but the only reason he would ever lay in this hard is when he's trying to protect somebody.
Yeah.
And, but he says this, Dr. Fleming made one mistake in this case, and that was you.
Yeah.
And
You're
I feel,
the weakling.
I was like, and I feel so sorry for you because I will spend every day from here on in and day out. You will be followed.
Yeah.
You will be harassed until you crack.
I'm gonna get to you. I'm gonna get to Ray through you.
Oh,
And it's like, holy shit. And at that point, it's like, I mean, you may not have felt pressure before, but damn, like you
better get
you're
ready.
in hot shit right now, man. And it's powerful because again, she, of course, goes home and there's just like some guys out in the car, just like smoking a cigar, just being like, "That's fine, we'll
like,
just sit here."
When they go to light their cigar, you can see both of their faces lit up. Like these
Yeah.
guys are not hiding.
No, they're just there.
Yeah.
And she tries to call Ray, and of course, like panicking, and he's like, "Just don't."
Ride it out.
Yeah, right, exactly. No big deal.
He can't prove anything, even if he's following you.
Right. And then come the next day, she was supposed to be in his office for like an appointment to kind of talk things out or whatever, and didn't show up. And then, of course, he gets flustered or whatever. And then, of course, the only person he can get a hold of whenever
Is
is
the
the
coroner.
coroner. It's like, oh, damn, buddy, you messed up. At first, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Like, I thought that she did something and got herself killed, like with the police or whatever. But he gets there, or well, I guess better yet, like he ends up, trying to rush his way there. And then, of course, Columbo's just sitting outside, propped up against the ambulance, just not giving a single shit. He's just sitting there with his cigar. And, of course, Ray walks up and he's like, where is she?
He might as well be checking his watch. Like, yeah, he's going to be there any minute.
He's like, where is she? And, of course, he doesn't even answer. And he goes, just walks past him. And I was like, man, you look guilty.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, like I said, the part that really is so fascinating is before all this stuff happened, that conversation that we're talking about where they had drinks in his office and Columbo's trying to talk about like how he has this sort of this problem where he needs a psychiatrist, and is talking about, like he said earlier about the fact that, I've done this for years and I have so much practice. The first time he kind of shows his hand is whenever he's talking in this like hypothetical scenario where he's talking about, well, let's say, and I'm not saying that I did, was to hypothetically kill my wife. Like, it takes a lot of, planning and forethought and courage. And he's like, courage. That's an interesting one to say. And and there's a lot of these moments where like, there's nothing you can do that can catch me. And it's just this arrogance. It's just the thick level of arrogance that it's like, oh.
And so he had just finished pegging Columbo. So
Yeah.
Columbo just got the pressure from the DA because Mr. Fleming had been complaining about Columbo to him.
Yeah.
And he comes in the office and says, Mr. Fleming, I'm sure you've heard, but I've been taken off the case. Apparently, I made some people uncomfortable.
Right.
I tend to do that. I bother people, and I things just don't leave me alone. And so, would you consider taking me on as a patient? He goes like, Columbo, you are the picture of compensation.
Right.
Compensation.
What are you talking about?
Well, you're smart. You're much smarter than you like to admit. And maybe because you're not as handsome as others or something like that.
Right, because of your looks.
Yeah.
Because, frankly, you're atrocious.
Right.
But he goes on and he describes Columbo, and then, wow, Doc, you got me pegged, but what about someone you didn't know so well? Someone you didn't know at all, like a stranger. Like a killer, for example.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I think Ray says it. You mean like, you mean like a murderer, huh? Like, is that what you're trying to say? And he's like,
yeah.
actually, yeah, that's exactly what
One
I'm
of them
saying. It's like,
homicidal folk.
because he was talking about murder mysteries and how he's like, talking about people like that. And he's like, oh, okay. So there's all these this back and forth, this push and pull they're doing. And like I said, by the time the conversation is over, in so many words, like Ray is like, no matter what you do, you wouldn't be able to peg me because I'm just that good, is what it kind of came across like. And then fast forward, like we're saying, all the way to the end here.
Oh, yeah.
And then just to him, like, to rush up there in a panic and have Columbo just sit there like, I'm just here.
Right.
I'm just here, and that's all I'm going to say. And that's it. And then, of course, like, man, you want to continue from here?
This is the part.
Okay.
This is the part that got me.
Take it away.
Whenever Ray gets into, like, the backyard where the pool is, he sees supposedly Joan's body being covered up and put into like a pseudo body bag.
Right.
And then
She overdosed on barbiturates.
Right.
That's the first thing Columbo says to him.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, I didn't think she would. And Ray's like, you didn't think she would what?
Right.
They move like into the house and he starts like, you didn't think she would what? And
Right.
It's like, well, yesterday I went and talked to her and I pushed her a little too far. Now, this next bit is as he is getting like drilled by Ray, it's like no, we're both sharing the guilt of her death, but there's someone you're forgetting. She did this all for you. It was all for you.
Yeah.
And man, he's almost like he's wrapped up in it, like he's wrapped around Columbo's finger.
Right.
At this point, like he's there's not even a pretense of like I didn't do it. It's like okay,
right. Maybe she did do it all for me,
but she's fucking dead now.
Right, exactly.
And it's so good.
And Columbo goes, well, Doc, I gotta say I feel bad for you because from now on you're gonna be a terribly lonely man.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't you feel like you owe her something?
Right.
Owe her?
I don't owe her anything.
Dime a dozen actress?
Yeah.
Like no, Doc, she knows you killed your wife. You're gonna have to have marriage.
Right.
Well, no,
We would have worked something
Not necessarily.
accidents happen all the time,
Yeah.
and it's just one of those things. And then
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is at this point, like whenever he's cashing in on this, like this kind of motive, where he's like, well, not necessarily. I mean, that's we would have worked something would have been worked out.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, I see what you're talking about here. Like you're saying, like you don't really care for her, and she was just kind of a
scapegoat.
Right, exactly, to get rid of your wife. That's the real thing. Is like you wanted to get rid of your wife so bad that you would just put this person in danger to do it. That's what you're saying right now. Mm-hmm. And then lo and behold, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah, always planning ahead, Ray.
Yeah, right. And then of course
she's
Jones
fine.
is just right there, totally fine.
now, why I love this is in comedy, it's Chekhov's joke.
Yeah,
it's that
Chekhov's
thing
gun, yeah.
No. In comedy, it's Chekhov's joke.
Oh well, yeah.
It's
same
that
thing.
thing you lined up in the beginning, and you've already gotten a laugh with it. You got another laugh with it, but you bring it back in your closing, and it's this huge laugh.
Yeah.
Right.
In this case, it's more of Chekhov's gun, but it's more bookended than that, which is why I would consider it Chekhov's joke.
Right.
Because each time it rings, the Chekhov's gun, you showed on the wall, then
Right,
it's in
yeah,
the drawer,
yeah. Or
kill
something,
somebody
yeah,
with
right.
it. So, but in this one, he said people see what they expect to see, and he used that in his own murder. But later on, he's caught by that same thing. Yep. He went there expecting to see Joan, and he saw Joan, even when it wasn't her.
That's good.
Now, I may be wrong. This is what got me the most. The body they were wrapping up. Whenever he goes back out, and she's up and about, the body, is it his wife?
No.
Okay.
I think
I could have sworn.
She's a much younger woman with much larger topography than any of the other.
I thought that it
could have
was
sworn.
for a hot minute. I thought it was the flight attendant. Like I thought that she came back in town, and that was the whole thing. Is that they were able to kind of get her,
I could have sworn.
Anyways,
that would have been so funny.
That would have been wild, dude. What a freaking double whammy.
Yeah. It's like because we never see his wife whenever she like for real
passes
dies.
away. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, she actually woke up and confessed and was like, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna use this to my advantage.
I'm just gonna play it out
to
for
get
a
a
while.
confession out of him.
But if his wife had said, that would be the only evidence they needed, and they could have stopped the case then and there.
I mean,
so.
yeah, but would the
Right. Yeah.
well,
I
guess it
You
would have.
see these strangulation marks. The
Yeah.
doctor was there.
Right,
Who's
right.
the only one who's in the apartment? It's got to be him.
Yeah.
Right.
The case
My
would have been
thought
over.
was like, oh, they wouldn't just take her at her word, right? But then they would have heard his story at that point already and been like, oh,
Right.
well, he's just fucking lying. Okay.
Right. Well, but then again, who knows? Maybe again, like I said, Columbo doesn't get where he's at by maybe not playing around with his.
Right.
You got to do a little hunting before you try. You can't you can't just have the prey handed to
Right.
you.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a little fun cat and mouse. I don't know. Who knows?
So, with this, I think about the times that people have come up and they've told me, I'm an appliance repairman. So people come and they'll tell me crazy stories about their machines.
Oh yeah.
I'm just nodding along, going,
Right.
Okay, so-
Right. Yeah.
okay, so whenever you go to put it into drain and spin, first and goes to spin. Huh. Well, I know that. I don't tell them, it's like, well, I know that's not true.
Yeah.
What happens next is the pump comes on and drains the water out.
Right.
So it's not that. The pump might not be firing. More likely than not, they're thinking of the agitation cycle. Okay. Because that also
Yeah.
spins. Anyway, so it's things like that. I'm like, I know what you just said. But
Yeah.
like, as one of those things, like, I wonder how many cases these fictional detectives could go.
There's a handful of times with computer stuff. I do computer stuff is the same way, where I'm like, now go ahead and open that and close this or open that tab, and it's like it's not there. And I'm like,
No,
I know. I'm looking at. Trust me, if we're looking at the same software, in the upper left hand corner, there's a tab you can click on. You're just not looking at it. But I can't say that. So you're like, so do you see that little green section off to the side? I'm like, yeah. There's a tab there. No, I'm like, yeah, it's next to this one. They're like, oh, now it's there. I'm like, yeah, it was always there.
Right.
Anyways, yeah. So yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff like that. Where I'm like,
And usually I pull a Columbo and I feed them all the rope in the world. Like, yeah, and they change the software all the
Interesting, yeah.
time, and color these color schemes are so hard to see. And just like,
Not
yeah.
real.
I was like, leaving them every once in a while. I'll tell people like, no, I'm not buying that one.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
usually that's not.
it
what
was
happens.
it was a good one.
Right.
Anyways,
I have a little bit of trivia about Columbo.
Okay, go ahead.
And I don't want to keep anyone too long. Thank you
Yeah.
guys, but so Columbo, the actor Peter Falk,
yes.
has a glass eye.
Really?
and
Is that what his left eye is?
I think so. So when he
Yeah.
was about 3 years old, he had cancer in his eye, and so it had to be removed. And to show you that Peter Falk is a character in of himself, he was playing Little League, and the umpire kept making wrong call after wrong call.
Damn.
He popped out his glass eye, handed it to the umpire, and said, I think you might need this more than me.
Oh my god.
Wow, what a
That is
badass
amazing.
move. That's so great.
And so they use the glass eye a lot when he's playing his dumber side.
Uh-huh.
And they'll use that to be like a little bit off and things like that. They also use it sometimes when he's looking just dead and I'm not breaking. They'll focus on that glass eye. But when he in other episodes, sorry, I'm going to stop here to talk about it. Columbo is so warm, and you know exactly who he thinks the killer is. He's so much colder with them, and he knows who the victims are, even when they look like they're the real killers.
Yeah.
He's so warm. The next episode, something like that, it's like Murder by the Book. He's so gentle. Watch that one too, guys.
There you go.
Okay, this is the only episode Peter Falk thought there would ever be.
Oh yeah.
So
Wow.
the raincoat you see Peter
Yeah.
Falk grabbed as he was running to film that. And so he just put that on. And later
Right.
on they went to take it back. What are you doing? This is my coat.
Yeah. The funny thing is, he actually doesn't wear it until the end of the show, because I've seen it, and but the first time we see him, he just has it in his hand, and he has it in his hand for almost the entire first half of meeting him, and then later he actually wears it like whenever he's like, confronting Joan and stuff.
When
I was like, that's,
when he's in the office. And so that's
yeah.
probably 30, 40 minutes in. But
Right,
that's
right.
only like 10 minutes after we meet Columbo. And it's when he's out of the hospital.
Exactly.
And
There's a handful of times where he just carries it in his hand a lot. And I'm like, and that's the iconic jacket I always know.
Yeah.
And on the other episodes, he's always wearing it.
Oh,
except
yeah.
for there's one where he's on a cruise ship and he's in cruise wear for the entire episode, which is
Love
pretty
it.
cool.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Okay, last thing.
Go
This
ahead.
is so personal for me.
Go ahead.
I like the show a little bit too much, and I know that on like a subconscious level. Because when I go to think, I'll scratch my head.
Yeah.
And when I go to make a point, I'm like showing my friends, for instance,
Right.
Ian and Dylan, that I'm thinking through something. I go, I know it can't be this, and I grab one of my fingers.
Right.
And I know it can't be this either, and I grab my two fingers.
Yeah.
And go
Yeah.
through. It's like, and that leads me, and I kind of like punch my fist.
Yeah.
It's one thing. It's like I'm like taking on Columbo
Right,
mannerisms.
right. We were joking last night before we, before the board died on us. We were joking that Chase, obviously regular fourth member of this podcast, he always with his thumb and his index finger will always like stroke his chin, almost like a cartoon character. And it's always kind of funny because I never realized it until I like watched his mannerisms. And like sometimes when you tell him something or he contemplates, he'll turn his head to the right, look up a little and go, and we'll like kind of scratch his chin a little bit. And it's just like a little thing he does. And it's so interesting. And he'll do that. And sometimes
He'll
he'll
do
go,
the same thing when he's driving. Like he'll do it out of nowhere and be like, "What you thinking about?"
Yeah, right. And it's like a tell. You can tell he's like really thinking about something when his hand goes up in his chin. He goes, I'm thinking about something. Anyways, love you, Chase. But anyways, for those of you looking to either reach us or find us or follow us or whatever, we have a Linktree/Ian Wolf, or you can just type in The Aftermath on the major podcasting platforms. You should be able to find us that way. Or I heard if you put a letter in your mailbox, postmarked for like 1968, and you just send it in there, it'll come back through the postage in like a box, from what I heard.
Right.
There
You'll
we
find
go.
a sacred heirloom.
Yeah.
And if you combine that heirloom with a fresh sprig of rosemary, the real, actual live Peter Falk will appear before your very
Wow.
eyes.
He'll hand you an old cassette tape, and it'll be our
Yeah.
recording.
Read you a little book if you're sick.
I heard also if you look in the back of your
If only,
closet,
man, I'd pay for that.
if you look in the back of your closet, that old jacket you have in the inside pocket, just peek in there. And the episodes are in there too. I figured that
You'll
out.
see us.
Yeah.
We'll wave up at you.
Right, yeah. But anyways, until next week, thank you so much for listening.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.